Okay, did we start?
Yep.
Okay, we got a nice full table today. Okay, as it should be. And thank you again, Gene. Thank God Gene came here from Hawaii, so that no matter how heavy the devilish functions were, we got still have the meeting.
We cannot cancel.
We didn't cancel.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And this is a great way to bring in 2023. 2022 was a sack of shit for me. Personally, I'm sure that there are a lot of people that probably had a less than wonderful 2022. So I'm going to just, remember the refrain from Sweet Virginia by the Rolling Stones, gotta scrape the shit right off your shoes. Let's start anew right now. And so going into 2023, after a year of difficulty of sustaining faith, let's discuss and let's study the Gosho, the difficulty of sustaining faith. So first of all, by virtue of the title of this Gosho, which is on page 471, and we'll be reading it from Teachings for Victory, the Gosho lecture from President Kadis, it's number 6 on page 71. Okay, so what does the title of this tell you?
Maintain faith is difficult.
That is difficult. Okay, that no doubt it's difficult. That who is Nichiren writing to? Shijo freaking Kingo. Okay, right? The samurai, the number one guy that was there at Tatsunokuchi that sent him all the everything. He's the one that's having this issue, because of Lord Emma. Okay, I'll get into all that as we go, but we're going to also discuss the concept of Jutta, which is a Buddhist concept that most of you wouldn't understand or know as Jutta, because that's from the sutras. But the bottom line is, going to page 471, actually 472 is where I'm going on volume 1 of Writings of Nichiren Daishonin, the background. This short letter is one of 37 still extant writings addressed by Nichiren Daishonin to his faithful disciple Shijo Kingo. So we know that Nichiren Daishonin wrote this because the Gosho itself, the letter to Shijo Kingo, still exists in his writing. That's the whole thing about Nichiren versus Jesus versus Shakyamuni versus anybody else. Okay? He's within the reach of us being able to validate the fact that this is what he's saying, okay? He says, Daishonin to his faithful disciple Shijo Kingo. Kingo was under great pressure from his Lord Emma and other fellow warriors to renounce his support for the Daishonin. This letter was written to encourage Kingo and to strengthen his resolve. So going back to page 471, it's a very short Gosho, one page. And the whole Gosho is in volume 6.
Yeah.
Okay? Okay. This is in regard to the passage, this sutra is hard to uphold. According to Achara Ben, who is Nikko Shonin, right? You said to him, I have been practicing the Lotus Sutra correctly since last year. Now note what he's saying in this letter and what the date on this letter is. Okay, I have been practicing the Lotus Sutra correctly since last year. This is the quotation that Nikko has brought back that Shijo Kingo is complaining. When you told me that those who embrace this sutra will enjoy peace and security in their present existence and good circumstances in future existences. That's what you would get from the Peaceful Practices chapter of the Lotus Sutra, right? Chapter 13. It says, instead, however, great hardships have showered down on me like rain. Is this true, or did he give me a false report? In either case, I will take advantage of this opportunity to resolve any doubts you may have. So he's qualifying to him, first of all, this is what I heard from Ben, from Nikko. Is that really where you're coming from? In case it is, I'm going to address it with you now. He said, he continues, is this true or did he give me a false report? In either case, I will take advantage of this opportunity to resolve any doubts you may have. So in other words, he's saying, I'm going to give it to you straight up. This is the full answer to all of your questions about why is this so difficult? Why am I experiencing this difficulty? He says, a passage from the Lotus Sutra reads that it is the most difficult to believe and most difficult to understand. Many people hear about and accept this sutra, but when great obstacles arise, just as they were told would happen, few remember it and bear it firmly in mind. To accept is easy, to continue is difficult, but Buddhahood lies in continuing faith. Those who uphold this sutra should be prepared to meet difficulties. It is certain, however, that they will quickly attain the unsurpassed Buddha way. To continue means to cherish Nam-myoho Renge Kyo, the most important principle for all the Buddhas of the three existences. The sutra reads, we will protect and uphold what the Buddha has entrusted to us. The great teacher Tiantai stated, one accepts because of one's power of faith and continues because of one's power of constant thought, or jita, or diligence. Another part of the sutra reads, this sutra is hard to uphold. If one can uphold it even for a short while, I will surely rejoice, and so will the other Buddhas. A fire burns higher when logs are added, and a strong wind makes the kalakula, grow larger. The pine tree lives for 10,000 years, and therefore its boughs become bent and twisted. The votary of the Lotus Sutra is like the fire and the kalakula, while his persecution are like the logs in the wind. The votary of the Lotus Sutra is the thus come one, whose lifespan is immeasurable. So who's he talking about? Every single one of us. The votary of the Lotus Sutra is the thus come one whose life is immeasurable. No wonder his practice is hindered, just as the pine tree's branches are bent or broken. So we should consider ourselves all towering pine trees that have been around for many a day. Okay, and this is just part of the deal. This goes with the turf as far as living out your life as a bodhisattva of the earth. From now on, he continues, always remember the words, this sutra is hard to uphold. With my deep respect, Nichiren, on the 6th day of the 3rd month of the 12th year of Brene, the cyclical sign Kino to I, to Shijo Kingo. Okay, so that's the Gosho. I want to embellish a little further before I go on with the Gosho lecture itself and go back to where he kept referring to it's from the sutra, right? So this is one of two places that it's located in the sutra. He says, Ajita, you should understand this, and I think Maitreya is Ajita, right? So he's saying to Maitreya in the Emerging from the Earth chapter, when Maitreya's gone like, where the hell did all these dudes come from? I've known you forever, and I've never seen all these people, right? I read you from the OTT, the only one point from chapter 14 or chapter 15, Emerging from the Earth. So at any rate, he says, Ajita, you should understand this. These great bodhisattvas for countless kalpas have practiced the Buddha wisdom. All have been converted by me. I caused them to set their minds on the great way. These are my sons. They dwell in this world, constantly carrying out Dutta practices. Okay? I'm going to go to then the definition of a Dutta practice from the dictionary. Thank you, dear. All right, from page 124. Dutta practice. A discipline or aesthetic practice to purify one's body and mind and remove one's desire for food, clothing, and shelter. In Buddhism, it indicates shaking off the dust and defilement of desires. Okay, Buddhism sets forth 12 disciplines to obtain release from ties to food, clothing, and dwelling. They are known as, those are all attachments, right? So that's what this is all about. This is learning to overcome your attachments in the olden days. This isn't even Mahayana, I don't believe. It's probably Hinayana. In Buddhism, it indicates shaking off the dust and defilement of desires. Buddhism sets forth 12 disciplines to obtain release from ties to food, clothing, and dwelling. They are known as the 12-fold Dutta practice, or 12 Duttas. Among Shakyamuni's 10 major disciples, Maheke Shayapa was known as foremost in Dutta, or aesthetic practice. In the Treasure Tower, 11th chapter of the Lotus Sutra, Shakyamuni says, "This sutra is hard to uphold. If one can uphold it even for a short while, I will surely rejoice, and so will the other Buddhas. A person who can do this wins the admiration of the Buddhas. This is what is called observing the precepts and practicing Dutta." The 12-fold Dutta practice sutra, a Chinese translation by Guna Bhadra, gives a detailed explanation of the 12-fold Dutta practice. You wouldn't care about that because it's the latter day of the law. We chant Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. The point is that this process of diligence to the last moment of our life is the Dutta practice. It's the same thing. In the latter day of the law, now we're practicing Mahayana Buddhism. We chant Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. We have this. It has the same effect as those teachings that were qualified by Shakyamuni as my original disciples. Yada yada yada. Okay, it's the same thing. Now, going to the lecture, The Difficulty of Sustaining Faith, page 71, volume 6, Teachings for Victory. President Ikeda's lecture starts on page 72. It says, February is the birthday month of Nichiren Daishonin, February 16th, so let's all remember that, and my mentor, Second Soka Gakkai President Josei Toda, February 11th. Every February, I reflect on the life of the Daishonin who triumphed over every imaginable form of hardship and persecution in his unstinted, dedicated pursuit of Kosen Rufu. I reflect on the great struggle of my mentor, who stood up alone amid the ruins of post-war Japan, and I renew my own vow to spread the mystic law out of my gratitude to both of them. Mr. Toda said, Kosen Rufu is a lifelong struggle, no, an eternal struggle. Okay? So, yeah, this is the program. I mean, this to us is peaceful practices. This was what validates the fact that we're badass Buddhas. We have the power within our lives to overcome anything. We must never give up, though, in order to reveal that. Mr. Toda said, Kosen Rufu is a lifelong struggle, no, an eternal struggle. Even when faced with the fiercest storms of adversity, never give up. My mentor warmly embraced the ordinary people whom society had ignored and oppressed, fully committing himself to their happiness, empathizing with their plight, and wholeheartedly encouraging them. He steadily forged ahead, expanding the great network for Kosen Rufu. The driving force behind that expansion was one-to-one dialogue. At the top of page 73, first column, first full paragraph. During the early days of our movement, in the Soka Gakkai headquarters, small branch office housed in a building in Tokyo's Ichigaya area, or Ichigaya maybe, Mr. Toda set aside the hours from 2 to 4 each weekday to encourage members who visited him there. In that small room, with 7 or 8 chairs placed before his desk, he warmly greeted everyone who came and asked with friendly concern asked them with friendly concern what was troubling them. His compassionate voice and gaze reassured the members, and they opened up to him and frankly shared their problems with him. Listen to this. They were struggling with all kinds of situations, including financial hardship, sound familiar? Difficulties at work, sound familiar? Illness, family discord, trouble with their children, human relationships. As Mr. Toda addressed each person's problem, his words brimmed with conviction and faith. His encouragement inspired one person after another to take positive action, because that's the only way they'll change it, is through action. On one such occasion, Mr. Toda said, last full paragraph, page 73, first column. On one such occasion, Mr. Toda said, there are times in life when it feels like we've entered a dark tunnel. I feel like I just came out of one. But once we make it through the tunnel, we can again enjoy a beautiful landscape. So this is really about life condition. We must not stop halfway or we'll be in the tunnel and all we'll see is darkness. Keep making efforts and pressing forward right to the very end based on faith. His words, keep making efforts and pressing forward right to the very end, gave everyone hope. As long, top of page 73, second column. As long as we continue pressing forward based on faith. So what does that mean? What's based on faith mean? First of all, we're of one mind with Nichiren. So we share in this conviction that we're Buddhas and that we can accomplish anything. So we don't do this from maybe I won't, You don't do it from a standpoint of stress. There's no power in that. You want the power to come out, you be the Buddha, and you challenge the Gohonzon to allow you to be the instrument of the law, to allow you to validate through the proof of actual fact. Our benefits are our reward that we share with all mankind. As long as we continue pressing forward based on faith, we can achieve victory undefeated by any difficulty. That was Mr. Toda's absolute conviction and the message he passionately and tirelessly shared. The letter we are studying in this chapter, The Difficulty of Sustaining Faith, contains the Daishonen's stern yet warm and compassionate instruction to a disciple facing adversity. And it is very strict because it's the truth. It's almost like, sorry, buddy, that's the way it is. That's not much of a straight encouragement in the absence of that individual being encouraged, chanting Daimoku with the understanding that it's their reward to be able to express the power of the law in their life. That these difficulties, they're the basis of how you bring forth your Buddhahood. Yes. You cannot become a Buddha without facing these difficulties and winning, because winning is continuing. All right? The letter we are studying in this chapter, The Difficulty of Sustaining Faith, contains the Daishonen's stern yet warm and compassionate instruction to a disciple facing adversity. The foundation underlying the Daishonen's encouragement is his belief, the Daishonen's belief. That's why we believe what the Daishonen says. It's our faith in what Nichiren believed that makes us of the same mind as Nichiren. In his belief in the infinite potential of each individual and his deep respect for all people. Because how many people were seeing the Buddha nature in all people? Not very many. It was a theoretical construct by the temples as a reward you might get, but it was not being taught. No, right now, today, do it. It's up to you. Yeah. We can achieve Kosen Rufu that Daishonen encouraged the people around him 600-700 years ago. Everyone has the courage of a lion king. Everyone has the courage of a lion king. And has the inherent power to break through even the greatest adversity. Everyone has the courage of a lion king, and everyone has the power to break through even the greatest adversity. You must believe and understand that before you can utilize and express it with your life. Through summoning up that courage and power, anyone can manifest a state of Buddhahood. That's why the Daishonen declares that as long as we proceed based on faith, there are no trials we need fear. We should see those trials every time. Aha, gotcha. Gonna beat you again. Kicking devil ass is what that is all about. He continues on page 73, second column. Faith is synonymous with courage, going back to the Gosho. This is in regard to the passage, this sutra is hard to uphold. According to Acharya Ben, Shijo Kingo, said to him, I have been practicing the Lotus Sutra correctly since last year. Now this was written in, what does it say here? 12, he's going to get into all that here. Next page, excuse me. He says, I have been practicing the Lotus Sutra correctly since last year when you told me that those who embrace this sutra will enjoy peace and security in their present and existence and good circumstances in future existences. Instead, however, great hardships have showered down on me like rain. Is this true, or did he give me a false report? In either case, I will take advantage of this opportunity to resolve any doubts you may have. Okay, so the point that I was trying to remember to make was that Shijo Kingo is quoted as saying, I have been practicing the Lotus Sutra correctly since last year. Yet when was this written? After Sato Island, when he's in Minobu. After Tatsunokuchi. Okay? So the bottom line is that Shijo Kingo has been watching Nichiren and has now decided to take on the aspect of being the mentor. That's how he got in trouble with Lord Emma in the first place. He didn't have that confidence or faith to try and convert Lord Emma until he saw Nichiren get back from Sato alive. Okay? And saw the result of his own offerings being something that he's seeing benefit from. Okay? So continuing then with President Kate explaining all this much more clearly. Page 74, first column, starting after the Gosho. The true measure of a person reveals itself at a crucial moment. Even when we practice Nichiren Buddhism, we will face various difficulties, okay? So we should never expect that we're not going to face any difficulties. Or rather, and this is the important point to understand, precisely because we practice it correctly, we will encounter obstacles because we took a vow. We volunteered to never ever quit, to be the living example. Those who maintain, so if you volunteered for it, you asked for it. What you're experiencing, you created yourself for the sake of revealing your Buddha nature to yourself and to everyone else. Or rather, precisely because we practice it correctly, we will encounter obstacles. Those who maintain steadfast faith in the Gohonzon at such times and forge ahead with an invincible spirit are certain to triumph in the end. Faith is another name for courage. The Daishonin teaches us to live our lives as courageous people of unwavering faith. This letter was written in March 1275, when the Daishonin was 54 and residing at Minobu. It is addressed to Shijo Kingo in Kamakura. This letter opens with the words, this is in regard to the passage, this sutra is hard to uphold, and closes with, from now on, always remember the words, this sutra is hard to uphold. This sutra is hard to uphold from page 220 of the Lotus Sutra, is a passage from the emergence of the treasure tower, the Lotus Sutra's 11th chapter. The ceremony in the air begins from this chapter, and the scene in which Shakyamuni entrusts his disciples with propagating the Lotus Sutra in the evil age after his passing solemnly unfolds. His pronouncement that this sutra is hard to uphold indicates the difficulty of upholding Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. So once again, President Kate is immediately saying, don't misunderstand what he's saying. He's not saying upholding this. He's saying upholding the Gosho, upholding your vow for Kosen Rufu as a disciple of Nichiren. It's not about the Lotus Sutra, the 28 chapters. It's about the latter day of the law and Mappo and Kosen Rufu. He says, this sutra is hard to uphold, indicates the difficulty of upholding Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, the essence of the Lotus Sutra. We're to understand that the essence of the Lotus Sutra is what's contained in Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. We don't worry about the 28 chapters anymore. We propagate the teaching of the correct teacher, Nichiren. And that Kosen Rufu is the most difficult of all undertakings. That to convince all these people that do not believe to believe is going to be the most difficult thing that's ever been accomplished in world history, because it's the beginning of an entirely new world history. In March 1274, second column, page 74, Exactly a year before Shijo Kingo received this letter, the Daishonin returned to Kamakura from his exile on Sado Island. Okay, exactly a year before, he had already gotten back from Sado Island to prove, hey, they didn't kill me. The following month, he remonstrated with the government authorities for a third time. So in May, he got back in March. By May, he had left Kamakura and took up residence at Minobu. And there beginning efforts to make certain the law would long endure. In other words, leaving a teaching and doctrinal foundation for his teaching that would last for the 10,000 years and beyond of Kosen Rufu. It's the basis of what President Makaguchi read and understood, President Toda read and understood, President Ikeda has read and understood. Okay? But again, the Soka Gakkai didn't start existing until those three men read and understood. Do you understand what I'm saying? So the bottom line is that the widespread propagation of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo is the widespread propagation for Kosen Rufu. It's not the widespread propagation of the Lotus Sutra. It had already been widely propagated. It was already widespread. Okay? So he's saying, pardon me, would long endure into the eternal future of the latter day. Having observed the Daishonin's great struggles, Shijo Kingo stood up with a profound resolve, and in 1274, inspired by the Daishonin, he attempted to convert his feudal Lord Emma to the Daishonin's teaching. So he's already been chanting for a while at that point in time. His efforts, however, only strained his relationship with Lord Emma, who was a staunch follower of Ryokan, the chief priest of Gorakuji Temple in Kamakura, and the number one adversary of Nichiren as far as the priesthood was concerned. Some of Kingo's fellow samurai, retainers took advantage of the situation to attack him and try to discredit him further in Lord Emma's eyes. Kingo clearly, and you got to understand that if Emma was ever asking Ryokan about Shijo Kingo, what should I do with this samurai I've got? Ryokan's absolutely going to go apeshit on anything to do with Nichiren Daishonin. Okay, so Emma's already had his head filled probably by Ryokan with anti-Nichiren kind of propaganda. Kingo clearly had great courage. He had accompanied the Daishonin during the Tatsunokuchi persecution in 1271 and been fully prepared to die by his side. But the situation with his lord and fellow retainers must have been so severe that he couldn't hide his distress and bewilderment, pushing him to the point of complaining about his hardships because they're occurring to him. And he's just a common mortal, as he knows so well. It's one thing to understand the teacher, the mentor, as being the mentor, being somebody that's significant. But if you still see yourself as less than significant, you've missed the mentor's teaching completely. Okay, there's no separation between you and the mentor. All right, so he's saying, fully prepared to die by his side, but the situation with his lord and fellow retainers must have been so severe that he couldn't hide his distress and bewilderment. Why aren't I just getting benefits? Why aren't I just getting benefits? His bewilderment, that's what he's complaining about. I'm supposed to just have peace and security from practicing this. Where's this difficulty coming from? Right. Pushing him to the point of complaining about his hardships. In this letter, the Daishonin writes that he has learned through a Cheira Ben that Kingo has questioned why he was experiencing hardships when he has been told that those who have faith in the Lotus Sutra, top of page 75, will enjoy peace and security in their present existence, which it says on page 136 of the Lotus Sutra, which is from the Peaceful Practices chapter, which, again, encouraging devotion is the thing that precedes it. That's what we experience. To us, that is, all of this shit to us is peaceful practices. Why? Because we're all Buddhists. He takes this opportunity to respond to Kingo's doubts, because we must all respond to these doubts. All of us will have these doubts. He's already said that this is like something that is part of being a human being. All right? He takes this opportunity to respond to Kingo's doubts We also see the Daishonin's thoughtfulness in first asking Kingo whether the report he received is in fact true. The Daishonin composed this letter with the intent of impressing upon Kingo the message that this sutra is hard to uphold. Now, that's a key word, though. To uphold means practice throughout your... to uphold means you're holding it up forever, right? To uphold means that you've taken a vow. You're going... So the difficulty doesn't necessarily come at first. It comes in the continuation throughout your life. Yes. A Buddha is one who keeps striving, because that's the example you have to leave for everyone else. That's why you have to strive to the very end, because they'll have to strive to the very end. And if you don't, who's going to show them that they can? All right? Because you're going to meet the great adversity. It is human. Middle of page 75. God, if you knew what kind of week I've been through. It is human to feel some doubts and confusion in times of crisis. As ordinary mortals, this is perhaps inevitable. But whatever happens, we mustn't stop moving forward in our Buddhist practice. Moving forward. That's the only thing you got to worry about, is moving forward. That's every day getting back in front of the Gohonzon and chanting Daimoku to resolve the issues that need to be resolved. Never questioning whether they can be resolved. Never having a doubt about the Gohonzon having the power to resolve them. Understanding that you are the difference between them being resolved and not being resolved. You have to fulfill your mission. We mustn't stop moving forward in our Buddhist practice. We mustn't close off the path to attaining Buddhahood, because this is the path to attaining Buddhahood. In Nichiren Buddhism, attaining Buddhahood means manifesting our own inherent Buddha nature and establishing a state of absolute happiness that nothing can disturb. Essential to achieving this are unceasing efforts. Unceasing, that means they never stop, efforts to polish and develop ourselves. That's how we become Buddhas. This whole process is a process of doing that. Attaining Buddhahood is not a far-off goal. You should never view it as that. It's a realization. It is not a destination where once you arrive, you need go no further, because the minute you do arrive, you become a mentor and everything changes, and now you have no option but to go forward. A Buddha is a person with the courage and wisdom to advance vigorously, without fear or hesitation, in any situation. A Buddha is human, not some otherworldly being. A phrase from the Lotus Sutra describes a Buddha as having few ills and few worries. From page 254 here of the Lotus Sutra. This indicates that though they may be few, a Buddha still has ills and worries. Okay, though they may be few, you still have ills and worries. A Buddha also struggles fiercely against devilish functions, which we call obstacles. But it is in taking on challenges and transforming them, flipping them from delusion to enlightenment, transforming them into, but it is in taking on challenges and transforming them into opportunities for growth while moving ever onward that the true brilliance of the life state of Buddhahood shines forth. It's necessary for that to actually occur. A Buddha is someone who is always striving. That means a daily practice, not when it's convenient or when you feel like it or you're in the right mood. In Nichiren Buddhism, attaining Buddhahood means fully revealing this life state in the reality of our daily endeavors, not theoretically. That is the aim of our Buddhist practice. Mr. Toda used to say, have faith that is like ceaselessly flowing water. Stagnant water becomes putrid because it stands still. The same is true of our lives. Not advancing is regressing. So as we grow year after year, decade after decade, we have the fortune for that to be the case with our practice, We should always understand. We have to continue to go forward. We never become the senior member that has arrived, okay? That really has done everything that needs to be done. We've assumed our true identity as leaders of Kosin Rufu. No, we have to keep leading as leaders of Kosin Rufu. We don't get a badge. We don't get a title. We don't get a static life condition.
No.
That's the whole point. We're human beings. The 9 worlds are going to be there to bring us down constantly unless we have the 10th world to hold us up. In Nichiren Buddhism, attaining Buddhahood means fully revealing this life state in the reality of our daily endeavors. That is the aim of our Buddhist practice. Mr. Toda used to say, have faith is like ceaselessly flowing water. Stagnant water becomes putrid because it stands still. The same is true of our lives. Not advancing is regressing. A few lines after the passage, this sutra is hard to uphold, come the words, this is what it is meant by valor. This is what is meant by diligence. And that's when he talks about this is true Dutta practice. Valor and diligence constitute the fundamental spirit for practicing the Lotus Sutra. Okay, so valor and diligence. What is valor? What's he mean by valor? Living your life for a higher ideal than just you. That's valor. Okay, that's nobility. Okay, and diligence. What's diligence? What's diligence? Diligence is not only never giving up, it's the never giving up combined with daily endeavor every day to accomplish what you're trying to accomplish. Diligence is to not, again, you could say, I never give up because you never give up. That isn't accomplishing anything, okay? The diligence is what accomplishes the function of never giving up. Never giving up isn't for the sake of being like a sacred person or Jesus or something, okay? The never giving up is because that's the source of the action that's necessary for you to reveal your true identity. He says, valor and diligence constitute the fundamental spirit for practicing the Lotus Sutra. It means being courageous at heart, rising to the challenges of adversity, and striving diligently in one's Buddhist practice, which includes practicing for oneself and practicing for others. Practicing Buddhism is a constant struggle with ourselves because it's all a reflection of us. All the shit that we got to go through and overcome and beat, all those devilish functions, all those obstacles, they all came from us. Okay? So it's practicing Buddhism is a constant struggle with ourselves because that's what we're struggling with. We're struggling with our karma. As common mortals, we're trying to bring forth our eternal identity. To triumph over hardships, we cannot cease in our efforts. So this dutta is, again, we conquer our problems. We have to. Quite often, the only reason that we do and can is because they're so extreme. They're in our face. We're forced to overcome them. We must overcome them. We can't function and be happy in the absence of doing something to change that. Practicing Buddhism is a constant struggle with ourselves. To triumph over hardships, we cannot cease in our efforts. In fact, it is through continuous exertion that we can bring forth our innate Buddhahood without fail. The words, this sutra is hard to uphold, therefore, not only express the difficulty of steadfastly upholding the Lotus Sutra, but also teach that as practitioners of Nichiren Buddhism, not as practitioners that follow that of the Lotus Sutra. Understand what he's talking about here. He's talking about Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. We must be deeply determined to continue battling all forms of adversity. Speaking of a young person, First Soka Gakkai President Tnesaburo Makaguchi once said, "Exert yourself bravely and vigorously." Buddhism means taking action. It means constantly striving. Even at my age, that's what I'm doing, President Makaguchi said. He was old at that time. Courageously rising to life's challenges is invigorating and produces wisdom, because it allows you to understand what life is like and to have compassion. That in turn leads to joy and boundless hope, because you've experienced what you know you can do. Those who strive bravely and vigorously with valor and diligence are never deadlocked, because they know where to go, to the Gohonzon, to the Gosho, to their mentor. Such people can be said to embody the very essence of Buddhism, because they are Buddhas. They are Buddhas. If that's how you function in daily life, you are the Buddha, period. All right? Enjoying genuine peace and security in this present existence, middle of page 76, first column. The words enjoy peace and security in their present existence and good circumstances in future existences are from the parable of the medicinal herbs, the sutra's 5th chapter. Nichiren shares this passage with Shijo Kingo in a number of other letters as well. For instance, in Happiness in This World, he writes, "There is no true happiness other than upholding faith in the Lotus Sutra. This is what is meant by peace and security in their present existence in good circumstances and future existences." Peace and security in one's present existence does not mean a life without any difficulties or problems. Okay? It means remaining unmoved by any hardship. It means upholding the mystic law through it all, striving like a lion king and achieving victory. Okay? So it means unmoved by any hardships. It means upholding the mystic law through it all. And then he qualifies, striving like a lion king and achieving victory. That's why the Daishonin says that maintaining steadfast faith in the Lotus Sutra is the key to genuine peace and security in one's present existence and good circumstances in future existences. It's through this attainment of Buddhahood in your present form that's the guarantee. Okay? In truth, during the Daishonin's lifetime, it was incredibly difficult to continue one's practice of this Buddhism. The Daishonin writes, "This is what I have taught my disciples morning and evening, and yet they begin to harbor doubts and abandon their faith." He laments that when his followers do face persecutions for their beliefs, they forget his teachings and discard their Buddhist practice out of fear. Even Shijo Kingo, who was ready to give his life for his beliefs at the time of the Tatsunokuchi persecution, felt his conviction in the sutra's assurance of peace and security in one's present existence shaken when faced with severe opposition amid the complex web of human relations in which he found himself. Daily life, the reality of being a human being living in the 9 worlds. This is all a difficult process. Because the Daishonin keenly recognized the real dilemma this posed for Kingo, he continued to send him encouragement infused with great conviction and compassion to dispel his anxieties, because it's his anxieties are the things that can keep him from continuing to do what he already knows to do. He already knows the teaching. He already understands it. He's already seen the benefit and the result. The devilish functions of fear and uncertainty and lack of faith are the things that have to be dispelled. All right? And because Kingo trusted the Daishonin's words and sincerely put faith into practice, he ultimately prevailed over repeated persecution and demonstrated magnificent actual proof based on the spirit of the oneness of mentor and disciple. Top of page 77. Remember it and bear it firmly in mind. From the Gosho, a passage from the Lotus Sutra reads that it is the most difficult to believe and the most difficult to understand. Many hear about and accept this sutra, but when great obstacles arise, just as they were told would happen, few remember it and bear it firmly in mind. To accept is easy, to continue is difficult, but Buddhahood lies in continuing faith. Those who uphold this sutra should be prepared to meet difficulties. Those who uphold this sutra should be prepared to meet difficulties. It is certain, however, that they will quickly attain the unsurpassed Buddha way. The Lotus Sutra is the true intent of the Buddha, preached in accord with his own mind. That is, revealing the ultimate truth just as it is. It is the most difficult to believe and the most difficult to understand, and those who propagate it are certain to encounter opposition and persecution, exactly as the sutra describes. Even sages and worthies cannot avoid problems. Sages and worthies are tested by abuse. Even sages and worthies cannot avoid problems, the Daishonin says. How then can those involved in an unprecedented religious revolution avoid criticism? And now he's talking about the modern day. He says, we're trying to achieve Kosen Rufu. This is like we're going up against all the other governments that have attitudes about what is correct and what's incorrect, all the other religions that have attitudes about what's correct and what's incorrect. This is going to be a great sea change in the reality of the way reality exists, okay? So he's saying, because we're going to actually change reality, how then can we, those of us that are involved in this change of reality, not be involved in criticism? Yet, though practitioners may understand this in principle, which is what I'm trying to get to, you can understand this in principle, but when faced with actual persecution, they may waver. Hence, the Daishonin writes with stern compassion, when great obstacles arise, just as they were told would happen, few remember it and bear it firmly in mind. The Universal Worthy Sutra, often regarded as an epilogue to the Lotus Sutra, states, hearing the profound law, the practitioner will come to understand its meaning and purport, its purpose, will retain it firmly in his memory without forgetting, and in this manner his mind day by day will become more acute. That's what happens from chanting Daimoku to the Gohonzon and studying the Gosho. Keeping in sight this single point, namely retaining firmly in memory without forgetting, which means a daily functioning practice, that this sutra is hard to uphold, is to truly understand the essence of faith in the mystic law. So even though you're being diligent, you don't think that diligence then is your safeguard from having to deal with obstacles or difficulties. Okay? It's the assurance that those obstacles and difficulties will be overcome if you do what you're supposed to do, because you already understand who you are. You already understand why you're here. It's your job. It's you asked for this. You said, I could do this. I will do this. You promised. Those who, at a crucial moment, never forget their faith and continue to resolutely uphold it are genuine champions and victors in life. Today, many people are joining the SGI in meetings, many people are joining the SGI, and meetings to commemorate the start of their practice are held in each area. One of the Daishonin's teachings, often shared at those meetings, is the passage that reads, to accept is easy, to continue is difficult, but Buddhahood lies in continuing faith. Here, the Daishonin analyzes the meaning of upholding, which is the foundation of the Buddhist practice in the latter day, dividing it into the two aspects of accepting and continuing. Harder than accepting faith in the Gohonzon is continuing faith and persevering in Buddhist practice all one's life, because you are going to be challenged, as every Buddha is, to run that gauntlet and prove you are the Buddha, to bring it forth from the depths of your life. Throughout his writings, the Daishonin stresses the importance of continuing in faith, because you go Titan, you run out of gas. No matter what you know, no matter what life condition you're in, it will change, it will go away, it is temporary. You have to sustain it for it to exist. On a daily basis. For instance, he writes, one who perseveres through great persecutions and embraces the sutra from beginning to end is the thus come one's emissary. That, I guess, would also make you a bodhisattva of the earth. Carry through with your faith in the Lotus Sutra. The words persevere and carry through, continuing page 78 at the top, express the Daishonin's heart, for he considered it vital to have faith that is constant and unchanging. As he writes in this letter to Shijo Kingo, Buddhahood lies in continuing faith. Continuing is a proactive stance. Continuing is a proactive stance. Again, action, implying struggling against the onslaught of difficulties that may arise and steadily practicing the teachings of Buddhism. Persevering and continuing in faith require tireless spiritual struggle. Persevering and continuing in faith require tireless spiritual struggle. If we just go through the motions of practicing, we will quite likely be defeated when beset by daunting obstacles. And that's what happens. That's why people go Titan. Because they weren't practicing with a daily sincerity for the sake of Kosen Rufu. They were practicing to get benefits. And once the benefit train runs late, they begin to have doubts. Even there's no reason to have doubts. They've already gotten so much benefit. They've already seen the power of actual proof. This is what he's talking about here. When the 3 obstacles and 4 devils, because that's who's going to do that, arise, when do they arise?
Anytime.
Huh?
When
we are actually advancing toward Buddhahood. If it's the 3 obstacles and the 4 devils, they only occur to people that's their function. Their function aren't just to be assholes. Their function is to stop Buddhists from expressing their Buddhahood so that they can help others become Buddhists. All right? That's because that's overcoming fundamental darkness. This is a war between fundamental enlightenment and fundamental darkness, the actual original state of all things. When the 3 obstacles and 4 devils arise, do we challenge them without flinching? Or do we let them defeat us? Are we beaten by criticism and opposition directed toward our Buddhist practice? Do we let our karma or our circumstances get the better of us? Or do we have the strength and wisdom to triumph over them? This is all determined by our own resolve or mindset. It's all us, nothing else but us. Obstacles, in fact, test the strength and depth of our faith. They're functional. We need to continue polishing our lives and vow to ourselves to keep struggling on until we are victorious, firmly resolving that everything starts from our own inner transformation. This is the spirit of faith in Nichiren Buddhism. And the truth is, when we face obstacles, we chant more sincerely.
Yeah.
And we chant more Daimoku.
Yes.
And we evaluate our life state and our actions. You know, that's the natural process. It's a part of how we grow. If you eliminate the difficulty, you're never going to get the reward. The difficulty is what creates the reward. Regarding difficulties as peace and comfort, and that's why we do that. We regard it as peace and comfort because we look at it as the firewood that's taking us to Buddhahood and ensuring us eternal Buddhahood. Okay, because we do it in this lifetime, we get it forever. Bottom of page 78, regarding difficulties in peace and comfort. This was the most difficult thing for the Daishonin to explain to his followers and have them understand correctly. Because if you're reading the Lotus Sutra, you go from encouraging devotion, where they're all going to try and shit at me and I'll never give up anyhow, okay, to peaceful practices where he's talking about we don't like the crowd, we go out and we hang and we're filled with joy. Okay, it's very confusing if you compare those two. But if you understand the Daishonin's teaching, his teaching is that peaceful practices is actually expressed through the encouraging devotion chapter. Regarding difficulties as peace and comfort, they're our friend. In the record of the orally transmitted teachings, the Daishonin states This single word belief is the sharp sword with which one confronts and overcomes fundamental darkness or ignorance. The commentary says belief means to be without doubt. You should think about this. I've read that to you many times. Continuously arousing faith is the practice of persevering and continuing, of which the Daishonin speaks. He also calls out, strengthen your faith day by day and month after month. Should you slacken in your resolve even a bit, devils will take advantage. These words express the Daishonin's profoundly compassionate wish to prevent any of his disciples from discarding their faith and to see all of them become happy and win in life. In the difficulty of sustaining faith, he emphasizes once more, those who uphold this sutra should be prepared to meet difficulties. It is certain, however, that they will quickly attain the unsurpassed Buddha way. Here he underscores a core principle of Buddhist practice. Tanesaburo Makaguchi and Josei Toda, the Soka Gakkai's first and second presidents, both taught us a faith that is completely dedicated to Kosen Rufu. Faith that accords with the Daishonin's assertion difficulties are to be looked on as peaceful practices is actually what the quote is, but they've put in parentheses peace and comfort. Though it is through the vow and efforts of the disciples who strive to emulate the selfless practice of these two great predecessors, dedicating themselves to the great path of Kosen Rufu as they did, that the principle of Buddhahood lies in continuing faith is realized. Why? President K is not dead yet. Both of them have maintained their faith to the last moment of their life. Mm-hmm. Both of them sacrificed their lives essentially for the sake of their faith. Is realized. Throughout the history of our movement since its earliest days, countless members have shown themselves to be among the few who remember that faith in the mystic law is difficult to uphold and bear this firmly in mind. This is the faith of the SGI. Every one of them, without a doubt, will attain a life of complete fulfillment that will shine eternally. I want to go back there again. Throughout the history of our movement, since its earliest days, countless members have shown themselves to be among the few. The specks, as few as the specks of dirt you can get on a fingernail, the people that'll make it all the way to the end, exactly as the Daishonin taught, that actualize the reality of being Buddhas rather than thinking that they were, are very few. I've been practicing 50 years. The number of people that have made it to 50 years that started when I started are much fewer than the number of people that are still there. Okay, regardless of death and accidents, all that kind of thing. Again, it's hard to do. It's up to you. It's hard to do. It's up to you. He says, this is the faith of SGI. Every one of them, without a doubt, will attain a life of complete fulfillment that will shine eternally. You are the one that wins by defeating those devils. Sending people of conviction into society, page 79. From the Gosho, to continue means to cherish Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, the most important principle for all the Buddhas of the three existences. The sutra reads, we will protect and uphold what the Buddha has entrusted to us. The great teacher Tentai stated, one accepts because of one's power of faith and continues because of one's power of constant thought. Another part of the sutra reads, this sutra is hard to uphold. If one can uphold it even for a short while, I'll be totally impressed. Because it's that hard. He says, even for a short while, I will surely rejoice, and so will all the other Buddhists, Shakyamuni said in the Lotus Sutra. The Daishonin, page 79, first column, bottom. The Daishonin further states, to continue means to cherish Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, the most important principle for all the Buddhas of the three existences. Why? Why is Nam-myoho Renge-kyo the most important principle for all the Buddhas of the three existences? All of them. Come on. It's the means by which they all became Buddhas. There are no Buddhas that did not become Buddhas as a result of a relationship with Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. Not actual Buddhas, not versus theoretical Buddhas. Do you understand? Okay, so that's why, that's what the Daishonin always put out there. I may be saying this now for the first time, but this has been known to everyone that's preceded me. Absolutely. Okay? The Daishonin further states to continue means to cherish Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, the most important principle for all the Buddhas of the three existences. The mystic law that we continue to practice is incredibly profound. The Daishonin indicates that Nam-myoho Renge-kyo is the teaching at the heart of the practice by which Buddhas throughout the three existences of past, present, and future attain enlightenment. It is therefore also the single teaching that we need to uphold. He's saying again, it's that Nam-myoho Renge-kyo is the teaching at the heart of the practice by which Buddhists throughout the three existences of past, present, and future attain enlightenment. So you must understand, everything emanates from Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. It is therefore also the single teaching that we need to uphold. In other words, Nam-myoho Renge-kyo doesn't emanate from the Lotus Sutra. The Lotus Sutra actually emanates from, when I talk about the Lotus Sutra, I'm talking about the 28th chapter Lotus Sutra, emanates from Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. Nam-myoho Renge-kyo does not emanate from the Lotus Sutra, even though that may seem confusing. But that's the Daishonin's teaching, and it's a very important one for you to understand. The practice of upholding Nam-myoho Renge-kyo consists of accepting it, top of page 79, first full paragraph, accepting it through the power of faith, and continuing to embrace it through the power of constant thought. Thought here means remembering and not forgetting. It is remaining true to the vow one has made to one's teacher. Have you guys made a vow? I have. Now, anybody that has made a vow, that means nothing to them. They don't even know what do you mean, a vow? Okay? Again, if you're serious about attaining Buddhahood, you promised to practice throughout your life, right? That's what we all said when we took the little ceremonial thing when we got our Gohonzons years and years and years ago, right? So he says that becomes the greatest force for continuing faith. All right? Thought here means remembering and not forgetting. We remember the vow. It's the vow. We promised the Gohonzon. It's not about the circumstance right now. The circumstance is just, it's a reflection. It's not the real substance of the issue. The substance of the issue is win or lose. Okay? Because you only get one shot at this. You go Titan, you win Titan. You might come back, but you've made the cause. That becomes the greatest force for continuing faith. And those who continue to practice this Buddhism, fully aware that it is a teaching that is hard to uphold, those that are prepared for what they got to do, but they took a vow, so they're never going to not do it. Never, ever are they not going to do it. Okay? They understand the downside of that. It's beyond anything that they might have to experience in this moment. Are sure to be lavishly praised. Now, I don't mind being lavishly praised by all the Buddhas. I kind of aspire toward that. I think everyone should, including Shakyamuni, and gain vast benefit. In an essay entitled, because again, Nam-myoho Renge-kyo is the basis of all the Buddhas having attained Buddhahood. If I'm the one upholding Nam-myoho Renge-kyo in the latter day of the law, all the Buddhas are going to go, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay? Are lavishly praised by all the Buddhists, including Shakyamuni, and gained vast benefit. In an essay titled "Sending People of Conviction into Society," Mr. Toda wrote to the effect, Japan seems as if it's on solid footing, yet it's somehow lacking. Somehow it's very shallow. How can we overcome this lack of depth and substance? It comes down to people. Each individual must shine with a vibrant and sparkling life force. We have to foster people of conviction. The only way to do this is to strengthen people's life force through the practice of a sound religious philosophy. This is what Mr. Toda taught and put into action. He also urged us to have faith in the Gohonzon and live out your lives to the fullest. That is the key. What good is complaining or worrying about trivial matters? Chant Nam-myoho Renge-kyo before the Gohonzon and live with all your might in your own circumstances and capacity. Those who always base themselves on faith will lead lives of victory. Page 80, first column, top. When all is said and done, there is no avoiding life's difficulties and problems. So this wasn't a magic bullet. Starting to chant was not a magic bullet that would allow us to avoid life's difficulties and problems. It's to be the victor in all of that. When all is said and done, there is no avoiding life's difficulties and problems, regardless of how we may try to avoid them. Since we are alive, isn't it better to face life's challenges head on and joyfully and confidently with a strong life force and positive attitude? I'm ready for anything. Surely that is the most exhilarating and valuable way to live. In the SGI, there are many courageous people who have remained undefeated by indescribable sufferings and sorrows and heroically overcome them. There are innumerable champions of faith, ordinary people who fight on joyfully against the trials that rise against them. In doing so, they are proudly setting examples for others. Though they may face tremendous challenges, they are positive and cheerful. Though one might normally expect them to be suffering, they are advancing vibrantly. They embrace everything with firm resolve and from a lofty state of life. The examples of SGI members striving to realize happiness for themselves and others, to change their own karma and help others do the same, have imparted immeasurable courage, hope, and confidence to countless people. They are without a doubt heroes whose stories will be recorded in history to inspire future generations. Page 82nd column, obstacles strengthen our faith. A fire burns high from the Gosho. A hot fire burns higher when logs are added, and a strong wind makes the Kalakula grow larger. The pine tree lives for 10,000 years, and therefore its boughs become bent and twisted. The votary of the Lotus Sutra is like the fire and the Kalakula, while his persecutions are like the logs in the wind. The votary of the Lotus Sutra is the thus come one whose lifespan is immeasurable. No wonder his practice is hindered, just as the pine tree's branches are bent and broken. From now on, always remember the words, this sutra is hard to uphold. In closing, the Daishonin employs analogies and reasoning to teach us how we should respond when facing hardships and obstacles in life. When logs are added to a fire, it flares up and burns brighter. The Kalakula is a mythical animal that appears in the Buddhist sutras. It was said to grow larger when the wind blows. Here, our faith as practitioners of the Lotus Sutra is likened to fire and the Kalakula, and the logs and wind represent persecution and difficulties. The Daishonin is teaching us, in other words, that just as adding adding logs to a fire makes it burn higher, and wind makes the Kalakula grow larger, the more difficulties we experience, the more brighter our faith should burn, and the stronger it should grow. The Daishonin goes on to state, the votary of the Lotus Sutra, and why would that be? Well, why is he saying that? The more difficulties we experience, the more brightly our faith should burn and the stronger it should grow. Because if we do what we're being shown to do, we're going to win in all of this. Okay? And that's why we're going to grow with the wind or have the logs turn into a bigger flame.
Right.
Okay? The Daishonin goes on to state, the votary of the Lotus Sutra is the thus come one whose lifespan is immeasurable. No wonder his practice is hindered, just as the pine tree's branches are bent or broken, top of page 81. He implies that, first column, he implies that by embracing and making our lives one with the eternal mystic law, we can become the thus come one whose lifespan is immeasurable. And since that is the aim of our practice, it is only to be expected that we will face an intense onslaught of obstacles. That is a very loaded paragraph. I want to go back over it. The Daishonin goes on to state, the votary of the Lotus Sutra, okay, the votary of the Lotus Sutra. Who's the votary of the Lotus Sutra? All of us. All of us, okay, is the thus come one, is the Buddha, whose lifespan is immeasurable, okay? No wonder our practice is hindered, just as the pine tree's branches are bent or broken. He's implying that by embracing and making he is implying that by embracing and making our lives one with the eternal mystic law. Now, what's involved in doing that? Just chanting Nam Myoho Renge Kyo? No, that's about Kosen Rufu. When you become one with the eternal mystic law, it's about widespread propagation. You're a Buddha at that point in time. Okay, so what do you care about? Nothing other than Kosen Rufu. Your whole existence in any incarnation is to make everyone equal to yourself, to the best of your ability, right? So that's what he's saying. Making our lives one with the eternal mystic law, which means chanting Daimoku not just about our problems and getting benefits, but chanting about fulfilling our vow, never giving up and living as examples. Okay? We can become the thus come one. We can become Nam Myoho Renge Kyo thus come ones, is what that basically is saying. We can become thus come ones whose lifespan is immeasurable. That's a Nam Myoho Renge Kyo thus come one. And since that is the aim of our practice, because we want to attain Buddhahood in our present form, that's what that just was, right? So since that is the aim of our practice, it is only to be expected that we will face an intense onslaught of obstacles. Okay? No biggie. Nothing that we haven't promised we're going to defeat. So how could we not defeat it if we don't give up?
Right.
Impossible.
Right.
Practitioners of the Lotus Sutra encounter difficulties because it is part of their practice. It's not because we're bad people. You must always understand that.
Yeah.
We're Buddhas. It's not because we're bad people. It's because the world is filled with bad people, and unless we also express the same nature as they have, we cannot provide them with the step ladder to come up, to achieve their own potential. All right? Practitioners of the Lotus Sutra encounter difficulties because it is part of their practice to attain the life state of the thus come one, whose life is immeasurable. It is the part of their practice to become Nam Myoho Renge Kyo thus come ones. In other words, for realizing the great aim of attaining Buddhahood. Just as the branches of a pine tree, though bent and twisted from long years of being buffeted by the elements, are forged into a thing of great beauty, we can attain the lofty state of Buddhahood, says the Daishonin, by making trials and adversities a source of growth and driving force for victory. That being the case, no matter the obstacles or difficulties, that being the case, no matter the obstacles or difficulties, as long as we continue to strive in faith and refuse to be defeated, our vitality and strength will grow and our good fortune will multiply. And we're going to live forever anyhow, even though it seems we die in this lifetime. So we should be looking about the eternal life that we have, not the temporary life that we have. Okay? We're a temporary gathering of the 5 components. We're not even going to be the same 5 components in our next life. We'll have changed our karma so that the reflected karma is going to be different. There's no way for me to be Tom. Okay? So, okay. Our vitality, okay. This is the meaning of a lifespan that is immeasurable. When we break through our suffering, and what does that mean? That means when we come to the realization of peace and security that comes from chanting Daimoku with sincere and faith. That's about chanting Daimoku to the Gohonzon. That's not about an event. When you break through our suffering, when's your suffering end? Never. Okay, so when we break through, the breakthrough is to perceive and understand our suffering. Okay? Not that it never occurs.
Again.
All right? Okay, so this is the meaning of a lifespan that is immeasurable. When we break through our suffering, we will savor a state of having undergone a profound inner transformation, because this is when we start to actually attain Buddhahood in our present form. It's no longer theoretical. We're actualizing it through living the life of the Buddha. The life state of the thus come one whose lifespan is immeasurable is nothing other than the life state of those who strive eternally for the noble objective of Kosen Rufu in a spirit of oneness with their teacher. Who would that be? Huh? Each one of us, but only if we are what?
Practicing.
Practicing, which will enable us to reveal what identity?
Mental.
Yes, we become mentors because we're bodhisattvas of the earth. That's where the vow came from, guys. The life state of the thus come one whose lifespan is immeasurable is nothing other than the life state of those who strive eternally for the noble objective of Kosen Rufu in a spirit of oneness with their teacher. That is nothing other than the life state of the bodhisattvas of the earth that are actually bodhisattvas of the earth, that actualize the fact that they're bodhisattvas of the earth by living their whole life that way. So in reality, it didn't really validate itself until they were gone. In other words, it means establishing a state of indestructible happiness. It's why it is so important for us to engrave in our hearts the words, "This sutra is hard to uphold," never forgetting them for a moment, never expecting it to be different than that. Be like Nichiren, man. I never heard him bitch or moan about all the shit he had to go through. And for me, that's like, okay, if it's not worse than Tatsunokuchi and Sato and living in the middle of nowhere forever, I can handle it. That's why it is so important for us to engrave in our hearts the words, "This sutra is hard to uphold," never forgetting them for a moment. And why it's important to advance courageously in the spirit of the passage, "The greater the hardships befalling the votary of the Lotus Sutra, the greater the delight he feels because of his strong faith," because he understands that means I am a badass and I'm going to kick his ass. The causes for the growth of the SGI Brazil, page 81. This is President Keita's analogy here. Our fellow members in Brazil have a truly inspiring example of how overcoming hardships leads to brilliant victory. In February 1984, 30 years ago, I made my third visit to Brazil. A decade earlier, in March 1974, I had been scheduled to travel from the United States, where I was visiting, to Sao Paulo to attend a cultural festival. But the military government in Brazil at the time did not issue me a visa, and I couldn't enter the country. I was heartbroken at the thought of how disappointed the Brazilian members who were waiting for me would be. I spoke to leaders there by telephone saying, "I'm sure this is difficult for you, and I can imagine how disappointed and frustrated you must feel. But this is all part of the workings of the Buddha's wisdom. No doubt it has profound significance. Now is the time for Brazilian members to rise up and use this challenge, as the starting point for a dramatic advancement that will lead to tremendous new growth and development. It is your firm resolve based on faith that will enable you to achieve this. In the long run, those who have suffered, who have endured the greatest hardship, always become strong. That is a fundamental tenet of Nichiren Buddhism. Brazilian members decided to start a campaign of chanting Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, Daimoku, to transform their country, and forged ahead with the motto, Muito. Come on, help me out. Somebody is Spanish, or no, it's Portuguese. If it's Brazil. Muito mais daimoku. More daimoku. More daimoku. More daimoku. That became like a famous thing back in a long time ago. You know, when they started doing this, they did. More daimoku became the watchword for everybody. In April 1975, the following year, they held a sports and culture festival in response to a request from the Federal District of Brasilia. It was part of his celebrations to commemorate the capital city's 50th anniversary. A local paper reporting on the event described the SGI Brazil as a cultural organization of which our nation can be proud. Then in February 1984, at the invitation of President Batista de Oliveira Figueiredo, sorry guys, who played a key role in, just a dumb American, who played a key role in leading Brazil from military dictatorship to democracy, I made my third visit to the country after 18 years. SGI Brazil members have worked hard day and night for peace and the happiness of others, and they've made outstanding contributions to Brazilian society. They have truly shown wonderful actual proof of victory. On February 25th and 26th of 1984, I was at last able to meet with our exuberant Brazilian members. During the rehearsal for the SGI Brazil Culture Festival, I walked around the auditorium greeting and encouraging members. The jubilant victory cheer of "E pique, e pique." I'm probably mispronouncing that badly, but "E pique, e pique, e pique, pique, pique," that reverberated through the event still rings in my ears. As a great champion of worldwide Kosen Rufu, SGI Brazil continues to achieve phenomenal growth. We're at the end, guys. Page 82, middle of second column. The path to victory. Returning to the difficulty of sustaining faith. The problems faced by Shijong Kingo continued for several years. Receiving constant guidance and encouragement from the Daishonin, he eventually overcame them all. He got 3 times the number of lands and all kinds of other great stuff and became Lord Emma's go-to guy. Kingo, who was also a skilled physician, regained Lord Emma's trust by sincerely tending to his medical needs. In October 1278, he was granted additional estates, demonstrating a great personal victory. Because he stayed directly connected to the Daishonin, Kingo was able to persevere in faith and emerge triumphant. As we make our way into the new era of worldwide Kosen Rufu, let us also engrave in our hearts the words, difficulty of sustaining faith. Let's create a strong network of courageous and unwavering champions of the mystic law, champions dedicated to the shared struggle of mentor and disciples who remain fearless no matter the storms of hardships. Faith in the mystic law is a constant battle against devilish functions. Faith in the mystic law is a constant battle against devilish functions. It is a struggle against stagnation at the top of page 83, first column. It is the courage to never give up. It is the spirit to challenge difficulties. And it is the spirit of the oneness of mentor and disciple, of courageously practicing just as the Daishonin teaches. As long as we uphold the never be defeated spirit of faith, the Soka Gakkai can proceed eternally down the great path of victory. Whew. Did it exactly. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.